Okay, we're going to learn a new song that we will sing at the very end of the service, and I thought I'd give you a heads up and teach it to you. And Mary's going to play it for us, and in one moment, the words are going to be up there for you. It's called May Love Surround You. Keep going, Kitty. There we are. May love surround you wherever you go. All right, and Mary's going to play it with us. May love surround you with warm, gentle arms. May love surround you and keep you from harm. May your always continue to grow. May you find happiness wherever you go. One more time. May love surround you with warm, gentle arms. May it surround you wherever you are. May you always continue to grow. May you find happiness wherever you go. Beautiful. And we'll sing this at the very end of the service. Thank you. And choir can come up now, and we'll sing you a little welcome song.
This is my song, the nations, a song of peace for lands of far and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my only shrine. My heart longs in lands uneasy, with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on Laura, Cleveland pride. But other lands are sunlight too and clover, and skies are red, neither as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, the prodigal Lord, the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Good morning and welcome. Can you hear me? Is the sound system on? Okay. Good morning and welcome. My name is David Brenner, and I serve on your fellowship board of directors. I want to thank you all for being here today and to extend a special welcome to any visitors. If you would like more information about the fellowship, please see the visitor table here and sign our virtual guest book. Whether joining us from home or here in Fellowship Hall, we invite you to come early for coffee and stay after the service for fellowship, where you can introduce yourself and join in conversation with kindred spirits. And there'll be no other announcements. I'm going to do a little seasonality thing. The Buckeyes are falling from trees, especially near Black Engineering, and you can get one now and you'll have a seat in your pocket all winter. And they're beautifully glossy and smooth. So, on behalf of this caring, nurturing congregation, I welcome each and every one of you to this sacred space. Here, we invite you into an experience of transformation, hope, renewal, and connections, which may inspire you to understand life in new ways. Thank you for joining us today.
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom.
You will notice in your program that this hymn appears 3 times. And we did that because we think it's particularly relevant to the topic today. The first time we will sing it with the piano, but the second 2 times you're going to have to be with us a cappella.
Business meeting, we were asked by our young people to
consider adopting a proposed 8th principle to join the 7 that the UU congregations approved in their present format about 35 years ago. UUs of color have asked our denomination to commit to the long-term work of dismantling racism and other oppressions. The 8th principle grew out of that recognition that we were not yet anywhere near that goal. As you would expect, during the business meeting, we had many issues raised about both the wording of and the necessity for an additional amendment. But recognizing that this issue is important to our young people, as affecting the world they will inherit, led us to adopting of the principle as proposed, with the understanding that we would begin a multi-year effort to truly live into its meaning and incorporate it into our personal lives and the life of this congregation. After the adoption of the principle, several of us began to attend webinars and do more reading to discover how our UUFA could make the vision of the 8th principle a reality in our faith community, to put legs under the words and make a real difference in dismantling racism. This program grew out of that effort. Now I will read the 8th principle. got to pick this up, sorry. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. Thank you.
Trot by Her Majesty Queen Rania Al Abdullah and Kelly DiPuccio, illustrated by Trisha Tusa. It all began with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and ended with the hummus sandwich. Salma and Lily were best friends at school. They drew pictures together. They played on the swings together. They jumped rope together. And they ate their lunches together. But just what they ate was a little different. Lily ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day for lunch. Salma ate a hummus and pita sandwich every day for lunch. And although Lily never said it out loud, she thought Salma's sandwich looked weird and yucky. She felt terrible that her friend had to eat that icky chickpea paste every day. Ew, yuck. And although Salma never said it out loud, she thought Lily's sandwich looked strange and gross. She felt just awful that her friend had to eat that gooey peanut paste every day. Ew, gross. Then one day, Lily just couldn't hold back those pesky thoughts any longer. "Your sandwich looks kind of yucky," she blurted out. "What did you say?" Salma asked, thinking she must have misheard her friend. "I said your sandwich looks yucky." Salma frowned. She looked down at the thin, soft bread, and she thought of her beautiful, smiling mother as she carefully cut Salma's sandwich into two neat halves that morning. Her hurt feelings turned into mad. "Yeah, well, your sandwich looks gross, and it smells bad, too," Salma snapped back. Lily looked surprised. She sniffed the thick, squishy bread, and she thought of her dad in his silly apron whistling as he cut Lily's sandwich into two perfect triangles that morning. Lily scowled. "It does not smell bad." "Does, too. Ew, yuck. Ew, gross." That afternoon, the friends did not draw pictures together. They did not swing together, and they did not jump rope together either. The next day, Salma ate her lunch at one table, and Lily ate her lunch at another. Meanwhile, the peanut butter versus hummus story had spread, and everyone began choosing sides. Each side had something not so nice to say about the other. Peanut butter breath, jelly heads, garlic breath, chickpea brains. Pretty soon, the rude insults had nothing to do with peanut butter or hummus. "You're weird. You're stupid. You look funny. You dress dumb." And then it happened. Somebody yelled, "Food fight!" Peanut butter and hummus sandwiches and other lunch favorites began flying back and forth between both sides of the lunchroom. They stuck to the walls, they stuck to the ceiling, they stuck to the lunch lady, and when the sandwiches were all gone, pudding cups and applesauce and carrot sticks took flight. Salma and Lily looked at one another from across the rowdy, splattered room. They both felt ashamed of what they saw. They both felt really ashamed when the principal called them into her office after they'd helped clean up the mess. The following day, Salma set her lunch down across from Lily. The two girls nibbled on their sandwiches in silence. Finally, Lily got up the courage to speak. "Would you like to try a bite of my peanut butter and jelly?" Salma grinned. "Sure, why not? Would you like to try my hummus and pita?" Lily laughed. "I'd like that. On the count of three." "Okay, on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Yummy. Hey, this is delicious, and this is heavenly." The girls giggled and hugged and traded sandwiches. After lunch, Salma and Lily met with the principal again. This time, they were there to suggest a very special event for the whole school. And that's how it all began, with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and ended with the hummus and pita.
Well done. All right.
We'll now give and receive the offertory. Please know that this morning, half of the non-pledge offering will be donated to the Ames Community School District to help students in need. The district seeks to empower students of all situations to reach their potential. They further this goal through student and family advocates that serve as resource liaisons, the Hope Pantry, where food and clothing donations are distributed, and assistive school lunch programs. The other half of the offertory will serve to support programs here in the fellowship that make this a community of transformation. We'll pass the basket here in Fellowship Hall, but for those of you at home, you can visit uufames.org/give to give your gift today. If you're visiting today, please know that your presence is gift enough.
I'm not sure they know what mic to use to broadcast, so maybe we should bring that over.
It's like we needed one.
Okay, great. Sorry.
I will see the best in you, and I know that you and you, Ubuntu, Ubuntu, and you are you because of me, Ubuntu, Ubuntu. I need you and you need me, Ubuntu, Ubuntu. We are one big family. Let us sing in harmony. Show the world our unity. Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Nabani, Nabani, Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Nabani, Ubuntu, 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 Nabani, Ubuntu.
Well, as you have already heard, this is one of a series of services that's intended to make us more aware of and more comfortable with the eighth of our UU principles, which was adopted by this congregation just last December. That principle works hand in hand with each of the other 7 principles. The 7 principles are not sacrosanct. They've only been articulated since 1984, less than 40 years ago. And if you've read their history on the UUA website, it's clear that their adoption did not occur without turmoil and strife. It is a truism of human nature that it is hard to accept change when so much of our world seems to be in constant and ever more rapid change. Sometimes accepting the uncertainties of UUism and leaving the safety of a faith belief behind feels like stepping off of firm, dry land onto a moving ice floe. And changing the balance of that ice floe can feel like our foundation is dangerously tipping underfoot. I'm sure some folks feel that way about the addition of the 8th principle. But if things start feeling too uncertain and infirm to you, it helps to remember that each of the principles works hand in hand with all the others. This morning, we will especially notice the 2nd principle that calls us to practice justice, equity, and compassion in our relations with others. Sometimes that's very hard to do, not because others make us angry or resentful about their acts of injustice or inequity, which are readily recognizable, but because differences of culture or personal experience mean that we do not even recognize our own acts that are the opposite of compassion. Do you remember that old adage, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me? Actually, that's totally not true. And we all know it because we've all experienced it at some time in our lives. As the only animal, so far as we know, that has developed a multitude of complex languages by which ideas can be preserved and passed on to others of our species, hundreds of miles or years distant, our words might be said to be even more potentially powerful agents of hurt than any physical weapon. The rapid development of social media, instant and repeated TV coverage, breaking news on that phone in your pocket, unfiltered statements on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, has magnified that power in the last couple of decades. And no one is protected from this bombardment of verbal sticks and stones. So I'm going to invite people up here with me to present some vignettes. And I want you to see if any of these vignettes strike a chord in your personal experiences. Come on up, folks. We have 5 vignettes. So the first, I would just like you to come on over here so we don't spend time walking back and forth. First, people.
It's okay. Okay. You look so nice in that outfit. I wish I was as thin as you. What's your secret?
I hate it when people comment on my thinness. I don't want to tell them it's a medical condition.
I don't think I've seen you before. Are you new here?
Yeah, I've been here maybe a couple times, yeah.
Oh, where do you work at Iowa State?
I don't work at Iowa State. Maybe I don't belong here.
So I'm glad you got to Ames for the game.
Yeah, it was a great game.
It
Thank you.
was quite a game. I bet you don't get here from Podunk very often, do you? I can only imagine what the election's going to be like there out in those rural areas.
I guess she doesn't know how great it is in my small town. Help whenever you need it and people who really care.
Hey, Private, what are you doing standing down in that hole?
Here we go again. I guess everyone here will give me a hard time about being short.
Hi, Mary. I love those new shoes you're wearing. I wish I could wear high heels. My husband doesn't like when I do because I'll be taller than him.
Well, you should tell him what Ed Carver used to say. You're the same height in bed, and that's what matters. Now, there have been lots of moments of amusement in the vignettes that we have just shown you, but these have actually happened to real people. And you can imagine what kind of feelings they brought forth in the person who was the recipient of the unwitting words that caused harm. That's right. Sorry. Now's the time that you're going to be out of color, right? I did not make the order. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your being is a miracle? How deeply we're connected at the soul.
Today we're talking about racism. This is about talking to or about women of color that hurt. Okay. It's on. Okay. The problem is that white people see racism as conscious hate, when racism is bigger than that. Racism is a complex system of social and political levers and pulleys set up generations ago to continue working on behalf of the whites at others' expense, whether the whites know it, like it, or not. Racism is an insidious cultural disease. It is so insidious that it doesn't care if you're a white person who likes Black people. It still is going to find a way to infect how you deal with the people who don't look like you. So while I agree with people who say no one is born a racist, it remains a powerful system that we're immediately born into. It's like being born into air. You take it in as soon as you breathe. It's not a cold that you can get over. There's no anti-racist certification class. It's a set of socioeconomic traps and cultural values that are fired up every time we interact with the world. It is a thing you have to keep scooping out of the boat of life to keep from drowning in it. I know it's hard work, but it's the price you pay for owning everything.
So the issue is that the words that we use that often hurt or make people angry or uncomfortable are primarily unintentional. Sometimes they're called microaggressions, but I don't like that term. They're not micro because they're a big deal to people who receive them, and they're not aggressions because we're not trying to aggress against anybody. They're words that just kind of come to us out of our gut or somewhere that we are not intending. And we use them with all kinds of people that we feel are different from us in any way. So our next part of our service deals with the same issues that Mary talked about, but in the context of our communication with and times together with people of color. They're usually delivered by well-intentioned people who are simply unaware that what they're saying or how they're saying it is hurtful. They may seem harmless or trivial, but research shows that they have a powerful impact on the psychological health of people who hear them over and over again. And the latest research indicates that years and decades of getting little put-downs or not so little put-downs actually can affect physical health. And maybe one of the reasons that we hear whatever disease they're talking about, that people of color have more of it. Daryl Wing Su is a professor at Columbia University, and he's a resource person and consultant to the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston, our national body. He helps them work with the eighth principle, helping congregations to figure out how to actually live out the principle. His research in 2019, a large sample of Black people in this country found that 75% of Black people say that they experience microaggressions or these words that hurt every day, often in the workplace. Each passing slight has a cumulative and lingering effect. Well, because most of us consciously experience ourselves as good, loving, caring people, the realization that we may hold these ideas or say words that are hurtful is highly disturbing. I don't want to think of myself as a person who has said things that hurt people. We've been socialized into racist, heterosexual, sexist beliefs and behaviors that are outside our level of awareness. Yet we unconsciously engage in those unintentional things that hurt people. I'll give you an example from my own life. I feel drawn to people of color. I worked for several years intensely with people, primarily Black people at the University of Georgia, both colleagues and people in smaller rural communities who were teaching a curriculum that I wrote for parents and children. I realized when I started working on this that I had an assumption that I didn't know I had. I assumed that these parents really needed help because we hear, or it's insinuated that, oh, no wonder the Black kids get in so much trouble, if only their parents will be better. Well, what I found out is that in some ways, Black parents, on average, are stronger parents with their children than most of us. So once I learned that, I built on that with these people. So I don't believe Black people are hostile or violent by nature. And yet, if I'm walking down the street in a dark area at night, I have a very different reaction if I see a Black man across the street walking my way compared to a white man. Where did that come from? I don't believe it. I don't think that's true. but my gut believes that's true because I feel a churning and a fear in that situation and other situations. So Lynn mentioned that we in our group have listened to several webinars, many of them from our UUA site in Boston. And we all want to learn what are the steps to take to be more aware, more anti-racist, and more careful in our speech. So one of the leaders from the UUA office in Boston led a very interesting conversation with about 8 or 10 people of color, many of them older people, who were their consultants and guides in this 8th principle experiment. And I was amazed, surprised, and shocked when I heard one young woman's answer to the question, how would life be different for you personally in your congregation if your congregation adopted the 8th principle? And a young woman got up and said, I'm very active in my church. I know people love me and I love being there. I'm in lots of committees and boards, but I have to say that almost every meeting or group situation I go to, I hear something that hurts me. Maybe not me intentionally, but maybe a put down of my race in some very subtle way that people don't understand. They're not trying to hurt me. I know they love me, but it hurts and I wish that were over. And that's the first time I thought, okay, this is really a big deal. Then a couple of weeks later after that webinar, I heard the story of a woman from Ames who works in a social justice committee or group in Des Moines, and they were missing a member. Someone had just vacated a spot. So they were looking to fill it with a new person. And she happened to know a young man, a young black man, who had just graduated from Iowa State University, and she was very impressed with him. He was living and working in Des Moines, so she thought she would try to get the group to consider inviting him in as a part of the group. And so she was talking to the group and saying, I think you'd really like him. I think he would make a good contribution to our committee. He's really articulate. At that moment, a black woman in the group stood up and let the lady from Ames know in no uncertain terms that that was not appropriate to say, to call that black man articulate. And I thought, what? Articulate's a good thing. You know, I wouldn't mind somebody calling me articulate. And so I went to the web and looked up, why is it that people of color are sensitive to the word articulate? There was a lot of information. There were a lot of places to look on that. And this is one that I thought got to me about that word. When whites use the word in reference to blacks, it often carries a subtext of amazement, even bewilderment. It's similar to praising a female executive or politician by calling her tough or a rational decision maker. When people say articulate about a black person, what they're really saying is that someone is articulate for a black person. Such a subtext is inherently offensive because it suggests the recipient of the compliment is notably different from most black people. And when we consider the long history of centuries of belittlement, put down, criminal offenses, hate towards people of color in our country, it's not hard to understand that their antennae are set to hear and feel things that to us might seem like nothing. So if we can understand their feelings and their reactions to these words, it helps us understand and learn new ways. I certainly hope that over the coming months and years, I will find resources and learn more about situations that are apt to be hurtful. In the next segment, I'm going to have some people come up here and we'll give a little demonstration. And while they come up, I'm going to give a message to the people on Zoom. So if you're in the next part, come on up. I'd like you at home to think about, if you have any pen or pencil around to jot notes, how do you react when you hear each of these? Because we're going to talk here as small groups how we react to these things. And so we'll be asking people here to turn to the person next to them after each one and say, you know, how did that strike you? Did you hear anything that might be uncomfortable for a person of color? So come on up to the mic. Peggy's our first person.
No, later.
Thank you, Anna.
A well-dressed man of color is standing near the curb in front of the Hyatt Hotel. Another man approaches him and says, "Will you call me a cab?" Think about what assumption the second man has made about the man of color. Next, think about what the person of color may be thinking or feeling.
So turn to each other and discuss what you just heard. Did it seem like nothing? Did it seem like something? Now I'm going to come around with the mic. And does anybody have something they want to share about their reaction? About Nicole and Ben? I was going to say Sam.
Yeah, so he was assuming that the black man must work there versus be a guest there, given the way he was appearing.
What else would a black man do in a fancy hotel, right? Any other thoughts on that one? Okay, let's hear our next vignette. I'll just give you the mic.
At the airport, the boarding attendant says to the person of color who is standing in line, "This is first class. You need to go to that line over there." Think about what assumption the boarding attendant has made about the man of color. Next, think about what the person of color may be thinking or feeling.
Can respond without being portrayed as an aggressive person of color. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah. Even if you just turn away in anger, that would be seen as you say, just can't even take anything. What's wrong with asking for, you know?
Yeah. You could fail to call the cab in the first place.
Okay, one more. Amy.
An Asian man is standing near the breakfast buffet in a hotel. A woman approaches him and asks him to get her a cup of coffee. Think about what assumption the person has made about the man of color. Next, think about what the person of color may be thinking or feeling.
Not wanting to say anything, and I don't think that's good either.
I have been talking a little bit about these situations with friends, just chatting over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of people say that, fine, I'll just shut up. I'll probably make a mistake. That's a common experience. It's like, now I'm afraid to talk because what if I say something wrong? Did anybody share in their group an experience that they have, a different experience that they have witnessed or taken part in somehow?
Yeah, and this was obviously years ago, but when I was a graduate student, a young male just assumed I was a secretary, not even a student, you know, and was just asking me. So, and I said, well, I don't know, I can't. He said, aren't you the secretary? I said, no.
No, I teach here. One more. One's a little different.
A woman of color walks into a dress shop. The clerk immediately comes up to her and tells her the discount rack is over there.
One of the more experienced men in a law firm, who happens to be Hispanic, says to his boss, "I'd really like to take that new case that's coming up." His boss says, hemming and hawing around, "Well, I think it might be better in this situation to give it to George or Henry," both of whom are white. Think about what assumption the second man has made about the man of color. Next, think about what the person of color may be thinking and or feeling.
They hear the theme of if you're different, the white guys, they'll probably be better received by our new client. And now we're about to sing our song again. How could anyone ever tell you? Anyone ever tell you you're anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you're less than whole? How could anyone dare to doubt this? That your thinking is a miracle. How deeply we're connected, heart and soul. This is now part 3. So, sometimes we say things to people that are
Aggressive towards them. A lot of people, without meaning to, a lot of people won't say anything to us. But if they do, here are some ideas about things to say.
Well, I was about to call and ask for you.
You knew where it was. You hear that?
Well, yeah, I remember where you were, but it was just.
Hello?
Yes, it's on.
Hello. It's okay. Okay, I'll try it again. Sometimes I personally, and I'm sure most of us in this room, have accidentally said something to someone that hurt them. A lot of times, probably most of the time, they won't say anything back. They'll just walk away feeling less than, feeling hurt, feeling angry. But if they do say something, here's some ideas about ways to answer back to them. Because if we say something we didn't mean to hurt them, and suddenly we're feeling hurt, and there's an aggressive tone coming back towards us, I'll tell you some that I've used. I am grateful that you let me know this hurt you. I'm learning to be careful with words that hurt, so I can be supportive and not destructive. Okay. Another one I've used, I haven't thought about that before. I can see that I need more education around this subject. Okay. Or my favorite, oh, wow, you're right. Once again, I am learning to be aware of what I say. Let me try to say it in a different way so that it's not a microaggression or feel aggressive. Or perhaps I ought not say anything at all. When we have said something that is a microaggression to someone, many or most, again, may feel hurt or angry, but will not know how to address it to us or say anything. But if you feel them withdrawing, you might want to say something about, if you need to say something to me, it'll be all right. That I need to know this is a learning experience for me.
Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning, a sharing community where our joys are amplified, and a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. It's a tradition in our fellowship to take this moment to share our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. If you'd like, you may come forward to the microphone. I guess it's this one. State your name, share a joy or a sorrow, and I'll light a candle for you.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I just wanted to light a candle for my grandma. She passed away on Friday, and amazing woman, and we'll miss her. And I just want to let her know wherever she is, we love her and hope she's dancing with Grandpa. So.
I'm Trish Straw, my husband Ray. This is a happy candle. Last Wednesday, Mark and Terry received an impressive award in Des Moines. It was presented by One Iowa. They were honored by One Iowa as legacy leaders for their dedication and hard work for the fight for social justice. We were fortunate to be present when they were honored.
One thing we intended to do is to tell you what the presenters said about Mark and Terry, but it would take the whole program. So there's just one thing we wanted to bring up. Our state representative was talking about one piece of legislation, and they said it would not have happened without Mark and Terry. For the last, since 72, 73, these two gentlemen have been what you would say, without them, a lot of things would never have happened for their community. And they deserve your attention. They're part of our community. They've done a really great job.
First, can you hear me? First, I'd like to say I'm sorry I didn't know about that award because I would have come down to see you receive it. And this is really a milestone for the fellowship on two counts. One is it was wonderful to have the fellowship voices singing again. And the second thing was this was a wonderful program toward working toward the 8th principle. And those of you who've been responsible know who you are. So thank you very much.
My name's Alan Miller, and it was a joy for me that we had a program on this topic. But my sorrow is that it didn't, I need help with the more subtle aspects. All of the examples were so blatant and stereotyped. I was raised here in this congregation, so all those larger, more blatant things are like, no, that doesn't happen with me. But I need help finding out and discerning those smaller, more subtle things that happen. That's what I need help with.
Same as mine, basically. Can I speak now?
I don't know. Are we unmuted?
Hi,
Can
my name is
people
Maya
hear me?
Hazlett. I just wanted to share a joy, which is that my sister, Kali, who grew up in this congregation as a UU minister, she and her wife just moved to Madison, where my parents live. So she's working at the VA hospital as a chaplain, and I'm just excited she and her wife are so much closer and very close to my parents.
As long as we're talking about the principle, I wanted to share that I'm in a group that talks about it all the time, and it's the words, it's this word, it's that word, and the only Black person we have on the board said he's really disappointed that we don't just go with it. And that's all I needed to hear, because I wouldn't do anything to cross somebody who's Black, who says, we need to do this to make it right. So I hope we can support it.
just take a few moments to meditate on these while we switch over to technology for the people at home.
I'm muted.
Is it possible? Is it possible for me to say something to the fellowship now?
Okay, did you join audio?
Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead, Fritz.
Go ahead.
Oh, Susan and I have been going through a pretty hard time, and I want to say we would have had a much harder time if it hadn't been for the support of the fellowship. And we want to thank everybody for all the marvelous support they've given us. It's not only helped us have a good outlook on life, but it's helped us to get through this period. Thank you all. Thanks to the Caring Committee. They've done an absolutely exquisite job.
Hi, my name is Karen Gerber, and I wanted to share a joy with you. Yesterday, I was having issues because my phone was not with me. It fell out of the bag I was carrying, and I was having trouble finding a way to get back to my house, and I was by the North Fairway. A couple decided to load my stuff into their vehicle and take me where I needed to go. And they wouldn't accept money. However, they asked for prayers. And I thought that was such a beautiful, wonderful gesture that I wanted to share it here because I think it's a lovely choice to make. And it's something that we could all do potentially. Thank you for listening.
Hi, this is Carol Barrick. I would like to light a candle in loving memory of our first cousin by marriage, Steve Thornburg from Yuma, Arizona, who was missing the end of September and found, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, after extensive land and air searches failed to find him. He was found a few days after the searches were called off. He had died in the desert that he dearly loved and hiked at least weekly. He had a business once where he took tours to the desert. He loved nature and often sent pictures via text or Facebook of his desert hikes. He was a really wonderful person. He and Claire were from Des Moines and retired in Yuma. And Denny and I had just been in the process of planning with Steve a trip to visit him in Yuma this winter. And I would like to thank the people at the UU for the beautiful cards of support that were sent. very much appreciated. So I'd like to light this candle for Steve. Thank you.
And the humility to accept challenge.
And now, benediction. The words will be on the screen, and most of you know it because you learned it at the beginning. Would you give us a little startup? Oh, sorry. Wait a minute, Mary. I wanted Cindy is the one who told us about this piece, and I wanted her to say a couple words.
A couple words. My husband Dirk and I spend the winter months in Venice, Florida, and while we're there, we attend a UU congregation. The benediction that's sung almost every Sunday is the one that's going to be sung here today. I brought the music back, and Jenny thought this would be a nice piece to introduce to everyone here. May love surround you with warm, gentle arms. May love surround you and keep you from harm. May you always continue to grow. May you find happiness wherever you go.
That's fine.